You can kind of divide Kirk Cousins' options into three different categories, and one of you did and asked me about it, and I'm going to answer it, as well as the rest of your questions, on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You like it? 3, 1, 2, 3. You like it?
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you to my hashtag everydayers. Those of you who listen to this show every single day, I love y'all so much. I appreciate y'all, and I hope you guys are growing with me. I don't know. I feel like I'm growing right now in this particular part of the offseason. I've been learning a lot lately. I hope you're learning with me. You can find this show wherever you find your favorite podcast, whether that is a place where you listen to audio podcasts like SiriusXM, which we are partnered with. You can also search out like Timberwolves or Wild on SiriusXM. Get hometown broadcasts right there on your phone. You can also find the show on YouTube or Amazon Fire and Roku. Just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. It's Twitter Tuesday, baby. That means that I get to answer all of your questions. You guys have some very fun ones in here. And I'm just so excited about it. If you want to send me a question, you may do so anytime. I recommend using the Google form in the show notes or sending me an email at lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com. You can send me a Twitter DM, but there's a very good chance I forget about it because it'll get like buried over the course of the week, unless you ask me like on Monday, and even then, like maybe. So, yeah, ask me questions whenever, and I'm going to answer them. First one comes from Derek Morin, who says, which of the following scenarios gives the team the best chance at a Super Bowl in the next 5 years? Like I talked about, I think 5 years is probably too long of a, to use a very funny term from Kwesi, too long of a time horizon. You just don't know what is going to happen in 5 years. You can plan for 3, and then everything else is like, you kind of have to be nimble and on your feet. So I'm going to adjust that to 3 years. And the 3 are: A, stay put in the draft, and if you miss on a quarterback, try again with a high pick next year. You let Kirk walk. B is trade up into the top 5, trade multiple firsts and more, let Kirk walk. And C is re-sign Kirk to a very team-friendly deal, or use a first and second on a non-QB, as well as a stipulation to his 2-year deal. And then later said, and I didn't have an option that's pay Kirk Cousins $45 million because he doesn't want to do that. Which, like, also, yeah, that wouldn't really be a viable option among these three, because it is very obvious that a team-friendly Kirk deal is going to be better than a $45 million Kirk deal. Like, he's the same guy. Paying him less is strictly better. So how about we put it this way? Pay Kirk whatever the price is that they negotiate, which the Vikings will try to make as low as he will agree to, right? With, the guarantees that he'll agree to and stuff like that. So I think that option is you agree to whatever the deal is. And we'll call it 40 right now, just to be like, just to have a nice, easy number to work with. I don't think that it will be exactly 40, but easy number, right? So 40 million there. So I would say trade up into the top 5, blow multiple firsts on it, let Kirk walk, and then just go like all in would be the best chance, because you're getting, one of the blue chip quarterbacks doing that, right? You're not doing that for JJ McCarthy, right? You're doing that for Jaden Daniels or Drake May, or if Caleb Williams falls because of epilepsy or something like that, which happens. Some, gas mask video kind of logic. You never know with the draft, that kind of thing. You're getting somebody who's like, should be a bona fide superstar. And I think that gives them the best chance at sustained success. There are very few franchises in the NFL that sustain success, that are constantly winning their division and constantly in the playoffs. It's Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, Tom Brady. That's kind of it. Like, there's a couple of teams that have like won their division 3 years running here, but one of them was the Bucks that did 2 of those 3 with Tom Brady, and then they got this weird Baker season. Even Aaron Rodgers and the Packers got interrupted too much. Like, it's really difficult to have that success unless you have like the guy, hashtag the dude. And the best way to do that, I think, would have to be to like go up and get one of those blue chip guys. And then I would say, the next best option would be C, would be to bring Kirk back and say, okay, you're going to be our guy. We're going to still kind of keep charging forward with this idea of Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson and, a decent enough supporting cast. We thought it was really coming together last year, but then he got hurt. So we're going to see if he's, if he stays healthy, maybe this is a contender and you can do that. I don't believe in it very much, but I think that's better than the third option here, which is the one that you just stay put in the draft. If you miss on a quarterback, which you wouldn't, if you are at 11, you would have, I would say, very likely to have your pick of McCarthy, Nix, and Penix. And I wouldn't be excited about any of those guys at 11. Although I reserve the right to retract that because I'm only like halfway through watching McCarthy and I haven't watched any of Bo Nix yet. So I'm kind of just going off of like osmosis and reputation. And then letting Kirk walk in that one. So you just like don't have a quarter. Like a Mullins season you're just punting the year, right? And so if the window is 3 years, because anything past 3 years, who knows what's going to happen. So if the window is 3 years and you're punting 1/3 of your opportunities, yeah, that's going to be the lowest chance to win a Super Bowl for sure. That kind of leads into the next question, which comes from Sam Olson, who says, if we go into the draft without Kirk on the roster and with a guy like Jacoby Brissett on the roster as QB1, which would put us in a spot where we basically have to trade up to 2 or 3 to get a QB. Won't that make us easier to fleece and trade way more than we should to get 2 or 3? You would think. I kind of feel like that dynamic is already in place because what makes it difficult to get to 2 or 3 is the fact that New England and Washington need quarterbacks and will want them. So you got to talk them out of it. That puts up a way bigger wall. The idea that, well, you definitely need a quarterback is like, we wouldn't be on the phone if we didn't want one of these guys really, 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 really bad. It's already going to be, tons and tons of draft capital. That's also totally okay because having your quarterback is way more important than having your first round pick. Like having a normal amount of draft picks is not that important. We gotta let that go. We do not need a normal amount of draft capital. We need a good team. You can't put draft picks on the field. So it's worth it, right? And the core to a good team is a good quarterback. So it's still very much worth it to go into that. There's a whole bunch of reasons that trading up in the draft for a quarterback is hard, though. You're definitely trading upstream. You're trying to swim upstream. So, it's going to be expensive. Get ready for it to be expensive. It has to be expensive. Pace asks, are there any rules against adding wins as an incentive for a QB? For example, give Kirk a $20 to $25 million base salary and add $2 million for each win. No, that's a thing. Usually you will see it more in like playoff success, like make the playoffs is, an extra $1 million, win a playoff game. It's like, $2 million per playoff win or something like that. I don't remember ever seeing one that's just on regular season wins. But you probably want to do the playoff one anyways, because like, who cares about the regular season? Go win in the playoffs, right? You wouldn't want him to make a whole bunch of money for going 13-4 and losing to the Giants in the wild card round, right? So that's probably why that's there. But it's just difficult to get guys to agree to that. Usually that is reserved for, I guess like old hurt guys that you don't know what you're going to get from them. So I mean, an incentive structure would be appropriate for Kirk Cousins. It's just that he's got such a strong track record of not agreeing to those terms that I don't really see it coming. Skull and Crossbones, love that, says, if the Vikings are looking toward drafting a QB, who is your preferred stopgap quarterback? Do you think that answer changes based on who they like in the draft? So like Sam Olson said, Jacoby Brissett, that's a really interesting idea. There's guys like Baker Mayfield that'll be out there, but you're kind of talking yourself into something like that. You're saying, Gardner Minshew and like hope, that kind of deal. I don't mind the Jacoby Brissett idea, but for me personally, that's always something that like I'll spitball on random guys and one before they've done it, but I'm not going to sit and actually put together serious opinions on 6 or 7 quarterbacks that don't play for the Vikings. I'll wait till I know who does play for the Vikings and put together a serious opinion on that guy, and everything else is pretty loose. And I think that's the way it should be. Otherwise, I mean, that's just too much stuff to cover. Nix Hall 2024 asks, say the QBs cost too much to move up from 11. We decide to pick an edge/cornerback instead. Are there any QBs that would be worth trading back into the first round? And what are your thoughts on that type of scenario happening a la Bridgewater? All right, Nix Hall 2024. I think I have a guess as to who you're getting at here. Like I said before, I have not watched Bo Nix that much, or I haven't watched Bo Nix at all. So I couldn't tell you a thing about him except the fact that he plays for Oregon. I think he's number 10, right? Is that true? Is he still 10, or am I thinking of Justin Herbert? I don't know. That's kind of all I know about him. Penix, I don't see as a first round player. I see him as a second round. I see him as like, where's their second round pick? Like 43rd or something like 42nd, something like that. That actually feels like pretty normal range. That's about where I would see Penix going. So he would be we picked an edge rusher in the first round and a quarterback in the second round. That's kind of the guy you're getting. And then JJ McCarthy, I'm incomplete right now on. I've watched a lot of the tape. I haven't watched all the tape I want to watch, and I haven't like really constructed all of my thoughts. So I'll defer that, but I will do like a whole show on all of these guys. So don't you worry. We will get to all of the like main 6 quarterbacks. We'll get entire dedicated episodes of Locked On Vikings. They get Patreon breakdowns. You can already see my one on Penix. They'll get an article over at Wide Left. Don't you worry. We'll get into them. But I'm going to take my time and make sure I get it as right as possible. I would much rather be late and have a better constructed take. Got a lot more questions, a lot of stuff about the draft, about cap situations, and all kinds of crazy stuff. So we'll get into it. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. If you work for a small business, if you hire for a small business, own a small business, you do a lot of stuff, probably. Like hiring is probably not your only job. You have a whole bunch of different hats and a whole bunch of things to worry about. And LinkedIn understands that hiring cannot take all day. It can't eat your whole day up, and it also can't be something that you like pick at over weeks. There's a sense of urgency to it, but it's also a really high risk investment. Hiring naturally carries a lot of risk. You agree to a salary with people, you spend a lot of time and resources onboarding them. So how do you balance how important it is to get it right with how little time and energy you may have to actually spend on it? LinkedIn is designed to help you out with that. They've got over 1 billion professionals that you have access to. The right candidate is in there somewhere. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook, and it's America's #1 sportsbook for a reason. There's all kinds of fun and wild and wacky stuff at FanDuel.com because it's betting Christmas. It's the Super Bowl, and that means that you can bet on the classics, the Gatorade color. I'm sure that there's probably a Taylor Swift one in there somewhere. I didn't catch it, but I'm sure it's in there somewhere. There's also, I think my favorite one that I saw was just, will there be scoregami plus 2,000? That'd be such a sick one if you caught a scoregami. Stuff like that. And hey, if you want, you can go place any $5 bet. If you're new to FanDuel, go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Any $5 bet, if that bet wins, and doesn't have to be on the Super Bowl, you can go bet on some heavy favorite in the NHL or something like that. You get $200 back in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. When you're done here, if you want something more substantial, I would love it if you went to patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. And if you want to watch some QB breakdowns, they're all free to watch. You don't even need to sign up. But of course, I appreciate the support so that I can keep doing that and making it accessible to everybody. If you can, I appreciate it, but no pressure. Let's keep going with this Twitter Tuesday episode here. The next one comes from Scene Season, who says, do you believe that DJ Wonnum is a starting edge too? No. Yeah, nope. Informe Pupura says, are the Vikings scheduled to have any compensatory picks this year? Also a no. They do not. Too many of their cuts were like before those contracts were up. Cut a lot of Spielman contracts last year. I don't know. People seem to think that Kwesi didn't do that. Yeah, man. I mean, Thielen, Kendricks, Tomlinson, trading away Zadarius Smith. They cut a lot of contracts that all had like void stuff on them. And guys like, I think guys like Kendricks and Thielen were cut before their contracts were up, so they didn't count. And then with a couple of free agent signings, that also canceled things out. So no, they are not scheduled to have any compensatory picks this year, as I understand it. But that also is just a projection. It's not official yet. And it's like one guy at Over the Cap that's like really good at projecting this. And he does get stuff wrong sometimes. So it's always worth paying attention to the official word. Eric the Red says, does a college player's most electric whatever in college football's whatever's career highlights fire emojis YouTube video offer anything of value when evaluating that player as a draft prospect? So I mean, it's limited, right? Obviously, because it's such a limited and a biased construction of that player's sample, right? You can put together Laquan Treadwell highlights that like actually make him look good if you wanted to do that bad faith enough. Like you could pull that off. I prefer the one that's just the one play from his rookie season. I think that's a perfect video with no notes. But like you can do that, right? You can put together Jaren Hall 2023 season highlights that lie very hard, right? And that will mislead you. So watching a highlight video and being like, look how good that player is, probably not the best process. If you're interested in having a serious process, it's probably not one of them. But here's what you can get from a highlight video. One, you can see how does this guy win? Because you know you're going to see him winning, but you can see how, right? If it's a wide receiver, is it a lot of catch and runs? Is it a lot of making guys miss after the catch? Is it a lot of deep routes? Unfortunately for like receivers and cornerbacks and stuff, it's a lot of TV angle, so you don't even like see half the route sometimes, but still you make do with that. And then you can see what is missing, right? Again, if it's a wide receiver and you don't see a lot of deep passes, this guy is maybe like a yak dude. Maybe he's like a bubble screen kind of guy. Okay, that's the kind of player he is. And I think what it can do, it can give you some information, and then I think it can raise other questions and hopefully point you in the right direction. So it can be a starting place, but it certainly shouldn't be a finishing place if you have any interest in like having good ideas. Mitch says, do you think the Vikings will be more motivated to trade up for a top QB after underwhelming performances by Nix or Penix Jr. at the Senior Bowl? What insights can we glean from these college all-star games in general? I mean, like some guys will fall way, way, way down because of like these all-star games or combine and stuff. You can have a bad combine and ruin it, right? Like that happened to Andre Carter. He was a second round pick going into the Senior Bowl. He had a horrible Senior Bowl, fell all the way out of the draft, had a horrible combine too. So like, or horrible testing. I think it was at the combine. Maybe it was like a pro day, but like that can absolutely happen. I don't know how much that, I guess I don't know because I still don't have the like full landscape of the quarterback thing down. I know there's like the top three and then there's kind of the next three. But it kind of feels like if you miss out on the top three and you stay at 11, you can have JJ McCarthy. And even if you hate those other two guys, but you like JJ McCarthy, like there's still another dude there. And he wasn't in the Senior Bowl, right? So yeah, there's that. I don't know. What can we get from these all-star games? Less than we can get from their college tape. I'll tell you that much. I think if you don't have a great idea of how you feel about these guys before they enter the field on the Senior Bowl and like do a bunch of drills, then I think you probably have done a bad job scouting him. I think you can know, right? It doesn't take more than all of their college tape to know. And scouting departments have been on these guys for a couple years now. They're not just like digging these dudes up in January like you and I are. Swede Skull asks, what percentage of our cap space is being used for different position groups, and how does that stack up against this year's playoff teams? So I won't go over the entire spreadsheet here, but if you go to overthecap.com, there's a page specifically for this. Part of the reason that it's like not really, it's a little too early for that. I would say look at that after free agency, and it can help you understand like different strategies and stuff. I guess you can look at like what it was for 2023 and see where it was. I know that they're very, very high in tight end spending, because they got Hawkinson and Josh Oliver. Not a lot of guys are paying that much for two different dudes. And I think they're comparatively very, very low at cornerback. But like right now, they have no money invested at defensive end. I would like wait a couple months until that is no longer true. It better not be true. My goodness, if they go into the draft with like Patrick Jones in a dream, that's horrible. I think they got to pick up an edge rusher, right? Better question like 2 months from now. Set a reminder. Bradley Knorr says, at what point should we be looking at potential contract extensions for Kwesi and O'Connell? Do you think they have enough information to be able to make that decision this offseason? So somebody else asked me this in the middle of the week, and I was like, I'll definitely forget, and I just answered to them. But now I've been asked the second time, so I can say it on the show. This is not something that fans of a team need to worry about really ever. I don't think it's like a thing at all. If you are fans of Ziggy Wilf's pocketbook, then you care. But because these don't count against the cap and they don't really have any impact on the franchise, unless it's like a 10-year deal catastrophe like the Raiders that will make you cash poor, which actually changes the cash flow of the team and changes their ability to like spend on other coaching hires and stuff. This is like hurt the Raiders. Unless you're in that kind of situation, you don't really need to care about like the contract re-sign, like the contract extension for the coach. Here's what always happens. It does not matter how hot the coach's seat is or is not. Basically, they never coach on a contract year. You will not have a coach go on a contract year. Like maybe once every couple of years somewhere in the league, there'll be like an assistant that whose contract expires or something like that. But for head coach and GM, no way, no how. So once they're headed into a contract year, I am sure they will get an extension unless they are fired. Those are the two options. So it's not really a commitment of faith. Like they'll sell it to you as one, but it's not really. It's just what you do. Yeah, there's not a lot of information to be gleaned from there. It's pretty much standard practice throughout the league, no matter how happy everybody is or isn't. I've got a few more questions to answer here. So we're going to chug along through the last few, many of which are very silly, and I'm excited about that. Today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash, which is a very, very clutch app on lazy winter days when you just do not feel like stepping outside even for a second. DoorDash has you covered. They will get that food delivered directly to your door, especially if you're in the middle of, say, a very important football game and maybe there are people over and you'll run out of fries or whatever. DoorDash is exactly there for that. Plus, it's a great way to get introduced to mom and pop shops in your area that you otherwise maybe would have never stumbled across. So download the DoorDash app if you have not yet already. And if you enter code LOCKED23, that's LOCKED23, you can get 50% off your order up to a $10 value. All you have to do is spend $15 or more on that first order when you download the DoorDash app. And once again, enter code LOCKED23. Subject to change, terms apply. Today's episode is also brought to you by eBay Motors. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle because eBay Motors understands that your vehicle is an extension of who you are. It is something that you take pride in, that you want to show off, and also something that is integral to your life. It gets you from point A to point B, gets you to work or whatever. That is definitely worth taking the time to take care of, and eBay Motors will take that time for you. They have 122 million parts for your car, and you can always find exactly what you're looking for, whether it's a supercharger or an LED headlight or something that your car actually needs to stay functional for a repair or something like that. Check it out at eBay Motors. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Wrapping things up here with this Twitter Tuesday episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast. Got a few more questions here. Next one comes from Waleed, who says, I wanted to ask your opinion on the future of the Vikings at the inside linebacker position. It's hardly being mentioned anywhere, but with Jordan Hicks' contract expiring, the only starter we have is Ivan Pace. So I think the reason it's not being mentioned anywhere is because there's other needs overshadowing it, right? All of the talk about the Vikings is going to be about quarterback until they get their quarterback and until we're sick of talking about that guy. Whether it's, if it's Kirk, we're immediately sick of talking about it. We've been sick of talking about Kirk for like 4 years. But if it's, if they draft someone, if they go do some weird trade we don't see coming, there'll be a lot of talk about that, and then maybe we'll start focusing on the other positions. But even on that defense, it's edge rusher, it's cornerback, it's interior defensive line. Inside linebacker kind of gets washed away in that. But I agree that it's still very important. Like, we shouldn't forget about it. There's a lot of needs. That's what happens when you cut a whole bunch of players. Congratulations on your cap space. Your roster sucks. But what I will also say is because of the way that Flores played defense, a lot of games they lived in penny, which means 5 down linemen and 1 off-ball linebacker, and that 1 linebacker was Pace because Jordan Hicks was hurt or whatever. That guy was Hicks when he was healthy, but they worked that was the Raiders game. They got a shutout doing that with a lot of penny, a lot of just Ivan Pace, a little bit of Troy Dye, but it was a lot of Ivan Pace. It was like the game of Ivan Pace's career. So the idea of living in that a little more and relying a lot on Ivan Pace is pretty amenable, I would say. That said, I don't think that means that they don't have to replace Jordan Hicks. No way. They definitely need a bigger linebacker because Ivan Pace is not a large dude. And against certain teams that love to be in 12 personnel, that have, their tight ends, that love to play physical, like the Bears and Packers are going to present this problem. Maybe not the Packers so much. They're really happy with their receivers. I don't know if they're going to be like, Matt LaFleur is just so like obsessed with 12 personnel. He might just force the issue anyways. Maybe, I don't know. Lions though, very physical team. You need some beef for that, right? So whether it's bringing Jordan Hicks back or bringing in some kind of run thumping, off ball rotational linebacker, I think that's good, but that's not a very expensive need. That's not a first round pick. That's not your premier $15 million free agent, not necessarily. I think there's a lot of guys you could bring in that are really only here to be on, short yardage downs, or, your kind of first and second down guy that comes off on third downs. I think that's perfectly fine. So that's also, I think, why it's like not as oft discussed, is because it's a little bit of an easier need to fill. Squeaks asks, when is too early to look at the QB class in the 2025 draft? Now is definitely too early, I would say. So it depends. Do you work for an NFL team? Because if so, you should already probably have been looking, right? And the way that those scouting departments are constructed, like people like the Southern area scout has already been watching Quinn Ewers, right? Like somebody's already watching Colorado. They know what Shedeur Sanders has. Or at least what they think. And then they'll watch his next year and they'll see how he grows and they'll get a sense. But I don't know about you. I don't work for an NFL team. So for me, it's way too early. I don't need to know that yet. For me, I will look at the 2025 quarterbacks at the end of the 2024 season, probably, whenever that happens. Or maybe I won't at all if they draft someone this year. If they draft their quarterback, a rookie QB that's like their franchise guy, then I probably won't look at him at all. So I would say at least wait until you know that you have to. Otherwise, I don't know. Unless you're like really into the draft and you want to cover it for like NFL reasons, then just go do what makes you happy. But if you're just trying to like figure it out for the Vikings, I would say at least wait till after this draft. And then if you're like super frothing at the mouth for your next quarterback, I guess do it. But you're going to burn out, dog. That's too much tape to watch. You're going to get bored. That's too much samey stuff. Hold your horses and wait until the time is right. A little delayed gratification never hurt anybody. Jordan Barrett asks, what is the funniest coaching hire to you so far from head coaches or coordinators this offseason? The Cliff Kingsbury thing is hilarious. And it's not like, I don't even hate that much. Like Cliff Kingsbury for somebody like Drake May. Like, I think that kind of fits. But it's really funny how all that went down because the Ben Johnson thing happened. By the way, go listen to Locked On NFL. I did it with Lauren Cox for Tuesday. Listen to today's Locked On NFL. Lauren Cox actually has some scoopage there from the Senior Bowl on what actually happened there. And it's very much, they did not agree about what to do at quarterback. And now everybody's trying to save face, which is very funny. And I believe Lauren too. Like he is not the kind of person that is just going to like make that kind of thing up. So very, very funny. Now, why he was told that, go listen to yesterday's Locked On Vikings. I've got lots of thoughts on why we hear what we hear. But very funny outward public, like the PR press to pretend that they're really, really happy with this when they very clearly are not. Absolutely hilarious. I love every minute of it. I also think it's very funny that the Seahawks fired Pete Carroll and hired another defensive guy, because there's a lot of people that just are like, if you fire a defensive guy, you must hire an offensive guy and vice versa. Like you just freak out. You fire like some like scheme lord dude. You're like, oh, we need a culture defense guy. We need variable, right? And vice versa. Like people that just go like ham on it must be pulling their hair out. And I think that that's great because those people have a bad take and deserve to suffer over it. Ryder Jensen asks, where does data for game time analytics come from? Is it all data for those circumstances? Does it take into consideration team strengths? So it depends on which data you're talking about. If you're talking about like fourth down models, I think like game time like game day stuff, that's like decision-making analytics. My understanding is that each team has its own analytics department. All those analytics departments make their model. And then on game day, they're, giving the advice that their models will say, hey, we have this as a go or whatever. And I would guess that all of those team models, I mean, of course they would have to take into account team strengths, right? Like if they're not, that's insane. But of course they would have to take into account, like, can we run block? If not, maybe this 4th and 2 we don't have as high a success rate on it, right? Or, do we have a backup quarterback in right now? Like that kind of stuff. I mean, that's the obvious stuff, but I'm sure that they have proxies for all of that and inputs that go into that machine. If you're talking about like the Twitter bots that you will see, Those are more generalized, so probably not. Although I think some of them do account for like the spread, but that's more of part of their win probability calc. And I guess that means that it's baked in though, right? So yeah, probably some like a more crude version of it, where if you're actually doing this for a team, you can say, well, I don't care about everyone's fourth down statistics. I care about us with this right guard and this running back and this quarterback, and like, what can we do, right? What's our success rate? That's going to give you a better answer. Zin Diesel, love that, says, you are forced to start Taylor Swift on your football team. What position do you play her at and why? Okay. So I thought about this a lot. She's 5'11", right? Obviously stick skinny. This is giving me cornerback vibes. This is very, obviously not a draftable size. Probably wouldn't want to be. But that gives me like nickel corner vibes. But here's what I also know about Taylor Swift is that she's like a cardio maven. So like she does like 3-hour shows, right? And as part of the training for those shows, she'll run on the treadmill and sing to like get to like train her breath and train her stamina. So I kind of like a little free safety action maybe, where that's a lot of running, that's a lot of cardio, strong safety, or even I could see a wide receiver role where you run a lot of clear outs with her, right? And she won't get tired, and you can like maybe take advantage of that. I feel like that's the best move somewhere, either like a nickel corner or no, not a nickel corner, because I wouldn't want her to fit the run. She's too skinny. So yeah, it's got to be like an outside, like a shorter outside corner, which I guess is something, right? I mean, we have Byron Murphy's same height, right? Yeah, 5'11". So I mean, and Mekhi Blackman's 5'11". So cornerback height, I'm going to go with outside corner. Yeah, outside corner, but like an off corner, not a press corner, because we're not asking for physicality. Sam Delker says, like you, I also try to do Super Bowl food that is representative of each team's city, but honestly getting kind of tired of KC and barbecue. What are you going to be doing, and any ideas other than barbecue for KC? So we landed on barbecue, but like barbecue joints will always serve it with like a piece of white bread. So I'm going to make a sourdough and we'll give you a slice of that. And that's the San Francisco part. And then to get a little bit more San Francisco, we're going to do a sourdough bread pudding with the test loaf, because I'm going to make like a starter one, because I haven't made bread in a while. So I think I need a warm up so that I can kind of get back in the rhythm of things. And I'm sure that one's going to have some issues. So we're just going to toss that into a bread, let that get stale, toss it into a bread pudding, and then, have the real one that I'll bake on the day. That's what we're doing. I don't have a lot. There's like Kansas dirt cake, which I guess is like a thing, or there's also, I've seen stuff that's Kansas City mud pie, but then I look at the recipe and it's a Mississippi mud pie. But like, I guess it makes sense that there would be some overlap there, but I don't know if you can call that a Kansas City thing. But there's like the dirt cake, which is like an Oreo thing. So there's like desserts that you can go into. I think anytime it's Kansas City Chiefs, as long as there's Andy Reid, you can get the Andy Reid mac and cheese. Google that. That recipe is everywhere. I've made it a couple times. It's phenomenal. I think that's got to be the move. Go make the Andy Reid mac and cheese and say, it's different. The other thing is, you don't necessarily have to do the city. Like for us, when it was maybe going to be Baltimore, this is a seafood free party. So crab cakes were out of the question, and there's like nothing else for Baltimore. So we were thinking of doing like a purple themed deal. And I was starting to concoct stuff with like ube and eggplant and, blueberry things and grape things. And like, we were starting to like really concoct, and then they lost and we didn't have to do that. But hey, like red theme it, right? Red theme and gold theme. And you basically get both things and go with that, right? Like, think outside the box maybe. All right. That is going to do it. I hope y'all enjoy the Super Bowl. We're going to talk 3 more times before then, though, because this is a daily podcast. I'll see you all tomorrow. Probably a quarterback. I think you guys seem to really be enjoying those. So we'll just kind of keep grinding through those, I think, until you get bored. Sound good? All right. We'll see you next time. And as always, Skull.